Thank you, Chairman Peterson, Vice Chair Thomas, Ranking Member Humphrey, and the members of the committee. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak to House Joint Resolution 3, which is an imperative resolution. This is urging Congress to call for this Convention of States under Article 5 of the Constitution. The Convention of States is going to focus on three main issues, and realizing that I'm repeating them because they need repeated. We need to make sure that, first and foremost, we have a balanced budget. One of the things that I've watched for my entire adult life go worse and worse and worse. Limiting power and jurisdiction of the federal government in some way, shape, or form, which is unhinged at this point. And I hate to stand as a person who spent the majority of my adult life in active military service to tell you that the federal government is severely broken. We are also trying to ensure that term limits for federal legislators and some others potentially would be pushed through a convention of states. If this is passed in Ohio, the resolution just encourages more states around us to go into this effort, reining in our federal government and offering more power back to the states and reestablishing states' rights, which are evident. I jointly sponsored House Joint Resolution 3 and greatly appreciate the leadership of Representative McClain because this is not his first rodeo with this. He has mounted this charge and has been at the forefront of it for some time. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to join with that because as I look back, I find it completely baffling that we are where we are with our federal elected officials who are clearly incapable of balancing a budget and in a budget that is progressively getting worse. We have to have accountability when it comes to decisions about those budgets and spending as our citizens, taxpayers every day are being directly impacted on our state and local monetary level. Poor decisions from government overreach and regulations that come from that can stunt or even cripple the great business growth and economic development that our state and nation have seen. As elected officials in our state, it's our responsibility to take this initiative into our own hands if the federal government refuses to do so on their own terms. Next, HAR 3, it's a tool for us as a state to urge Congress, and you heard some of the historical implications of that. I'll take you back to also saying that I was just a graduating senior from high school whenever the last time there was a great push of states in our nation actually got the Congress of the United States to do something. And out of that, we actually had what was called then the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985. Some will better recognize that as Graham-Rudman-Hollings. And realizing that that put a timetable on that by the time that I was actually sworn into that federal service for the rest of my career in 1991, they were required and mandated to balance the budget before that fiscal year was complete. And you might ask yourself whether they ever completed that task. Now, the one thing I will say about that is the reason why we got a Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act at the federal level was because the states were saying, and as you heard, many highly esteemed people were talking about this problem then, which has not gotten any better close to 40 years later. And here we are 30 years prior when it was supposed to have been done. And here we are, deeply indebted. The current system in Washington has established career politicians whose greed has been on display over the past several years especially. I believe we need to limit the power of our large overreaching federal government, break up the ties that an elected official has in the legislative branch and its stakeholders through term limits, like we have in Ohio. Representative McClain and I find it's necessary to expand the concept further through the resolution and promoting conversations in Ohio about limiting power by restricting jurisdiction, creating those fiscal boundaries, and establishing those term limits so that we do have fresh ideas that are coming in and not the same freshly paid politicians that are staying in the seats that they are in. Our founding fathers of this country created a path for the states to reclaim their power in anticipation of federal government overreach. This was implemented with the purpose of reining in the federal government, and Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution provides us the power to call a convention of states. whereby we then propose such amendments so that we can retain the power of our states. This resolution, as you heard, will join Ohio with numerous additional states. As my colleague already mentioned, there are many out there who are also in the same place that we are, hoping to help rein in our federal government.